guys, so for today's video I'm going to be discussing vivariums versus snake racks for housing ball pythons, and the beautiful Jaffa is going to be joining me. Hey Jaff! So just a little disclaimer, I want to say that I am neither for or against either racks or vivs, and I think both work well under different circumstances and for different reasons. I'm going to be going through different topics including size, price, heating, humidity, visibility, security and feeding, and kind of go through the pros and cons for each. So let's start with size. Now, the recommended size vivarium for an adult ball python is 4 feet, and I often see on Facebook people asking why is a 4-foot vivarium recommended, but it's okay to keep them in a smaller V70 tub? Well, my answer to that is, if you take a look at the natural habitat and that they actually spend the majority of their time underground in burrows, a rub or tub actually simulates that environment very closely. It's dark at the back, compact, and has one opening. Therefore, we don't need to add any additional hides. However, in a vivarium, we need to provide at least 2 hides, one warm and one cool. Now, for an adult ball python, these hides can be fairly sizable, and you must also provide an adequate water bowl. So really, a 3-foot viv or smaller for an adult would just be too small. I mean, how would you fit everything in? Also, a good heat gradient may be harder to achieve in anything smaller than a 4-foot viv using a CHE. Not impossible, but maybe more difficult. So I think there are my 2 reasons for why an adult ball python needs a 4-foot vivarium, but not exactly a 4-foot tub. And I'm pretty sure the V70 tubs that I use are close to 3 foot. So without any hides, well, I provide one usually. They still have plenty of floor space. However, a tub offers pretty much no height. Now, for a ball python, that's okay. They are heavy-bodied terrestrial snakes, but they do occasionally like to climb, albeit a bit clumsy. So the viv is definitely better in that aspect. Also, when it comes to size, vivariums will obviously take up a lot more space in your house in comparison with a racking system. So if you own a lot of snakes or you are a breeder, then a rack may be the way to go. But if you just have 1 or 2, then why not try out a viv? Okay, let's move on to price. Now, I think a DIY racking system is probably the cheapest way to go. However, if you are like me and have absolutely no idea where to even start putting a rack together, then you'll have to buy one, and they can be quite expensive. And I think the same can be said for vivariums. I honestly think we actually end up spending more money on heating, lighting and thermostats. And given that each viv needs to be heated separately, I would say the vivarium is probably the most expensive choice out of the 2. Okay, on to heating. So with both the vivarium and rack, we need to provide a warm side, a cool side and a hot spot of around 31 to 32 degrees Celsius. With a vivarium, it is best to use a ceramic heat emitter, or CHE for short. This needs to be covered with a guard to prevent burns and connected to a thermostat in order to properly control the temperature. A thermostat is probably the most important piece of equipment reptile keepers use, and it controls any type of heat source. A dimming stat is usually best to use with a CHE, so it's not like constantly turning it on and off. So heating a vivarium is pretty straightforward, but the best thing about it is you actually don't need to heat the room. it's in. So you could place the vivarium anywhere in your house and still get the desired temp, unlike with a rack where you can use either heat cable, tape, panels or mats. You're really only heating the hotspot and area around the hotspot. So with a rack you actually need a designated room where you can control the heat. I keep my room between 22 and 24 degrees Celsius, and again, whatever heat source you're using, it needs to be connected to a thermostat. For my snake rack I use heat panels and they are connected to pulse stats. So in terms of heating, I think the desired temperatures are easily achieved in both vivariums and racks. It just depends on where you want to place them within your home. And next up is humidity, and I think racks or tubs, shall we say, actually hold humidity the best between the two, because with the vivarium the CHE dries out the air quicker. Now with ball pythons this only becomes an issue during shedding, so you really need to keep a lookout for the signs your snake is in pre-shed, like the pink belly, cloudy eyes and dull appearance. So during this period you need to up the humidity in order to have a good shed within the vivarium. And I can honestly say I have never had any issues with shedding within the rack. They just hold humidity better, in my opinion, that is. As far as visibility goes, obviously a vivarium is more appealing to us as keepers, especially when we add lots of decor like fake plants, vines, I don't know, hides, bowls, etc. However, it's probably not as appealing to the snake, who would probably much prefer some privacy and not feel so vulnerable being on show. We can still add decor to tubs for the snake to enjoy, but we can't actually see it. And a rack can sometimes look very boring on the outside. I'm thinking I might add some stickers to mine though, hopefully make it look a bit better. But yeah, I think in terms of visibility, I think vivs are better for us to look at. But I guess the rack is better for the snake, which in fact brings us on to security. So I think the snake definitely feels more secure in a rub. But as far as keeping these guys inside their enclosure, I would say both vivariums and racks need some sort of locking device so the snake doesn't escape. Thankfully, I haven't had any escapes yet. So yeah, hopefully I don't ever have any escapes. But as far as security is concerned, they both need some kind of a locking system. But in terms of where the snake feels more secure, then I would say a rack. So let's talk about feeding. I first just want to say that you should always feed inside the enclosure. It's just less stressful for the snake. There's no need to move to feed. That whole, cage aggression thing is just myth. Don't move it. Just feed it where it is and it will be much happier. So which is best, a viv or a rack for feeding? I think I'm gonna go with a vivarium in my opinion, just simply because you can see where the snake is. So if he's waiting at the left hand side, you can approach from the right hand side, whereas a tub only has one opening. And if your snakes are anything like mine, then they will be right there waiting for the food, and that can definitely get the adrenaline going, especially when they come flying out, which I've had on a few occasions. Although I did have, when Buddy was living in a vivarium, he did come out of it on occasion, but I think I feel safer feeding with a vivarium rather than a rack. As well, you have to like put your hand right there to open it, although you could just open it with the tongs, but I use my hand, which is probably a bit stupid. But yeah, I would definitely prefer to feed the snake with its inside its vivarium rather than the rack, but hey. So let's have a quick rundown of the topics. We'll start with size. I think both the vivarium and rack and rack work well. But I think that the vivarium definitely provides more height for the snake, so I'm gonna give size to the vivarium. Price, I'm gonna go with the DIY rack as being the least expensive of the both. Humidity, gonna give it to the rack for keeping good humidity. Visibility, again, they both work well, but for different reasons. Vivs are best for us, racks are probably best for the snake. Heating, again, they both work well, but I will give it to the vivarium because it can be placed anywhere in your home, so you don't need a heated room. Security, I would say the snake definitely feels more secure in a rack. And lastly, feeding. I'm gonna go with the vivarium. I feel safer feeding it within a vivarium. So it's pretty much even Stevens. And like I said at the beginning, they both work really well for different reasons. I do also want to mention that the snake itself may have a preference. When I first got Buddy, I housed him in a vivarium, and he did well until he became a little bit bigger and he actually went off food. Now, I know these snakes are known for going on hunger strikes, but I also noticed he had become a bit skittish when I would walk in the room, so after about 6 or 7 months, I decided to try him in the rack. So I left him settle in for about a week and then offered him a rat, and I swear he almost gave me a heart attack with the ferocity of the strike, especially when I wasn't expecting it. And ever since then, he's pretty much been smashing every food item, except like occasionally he won't, but as far as 6 or 7 month strike, he's nowhere near doing anything like that inside the rack. So I guess he probably just prefers the security of the rack. Now on the other side of things, I have Toto, who I'm actually going to be putting into a vivarium, mainly because a few weeks ago I noticed she was like pushing against the opening where there's like this little gap. I figured she would stop eventually, maybe after a feed, but unfortunately she didn't, and it looked as though around the top of her nasal cavity there was becoming it was becoming a bit swollen. So I've put her in this rub for now, but in the new year I'm gonna get her out and put her into a 4-foot vivarium. It's currently up in the attic and it kind of needs to be altered because it did house a bearded dragon. So I'll probably do a video on that, just to show you guys how I would set up a vivarium for a royal or ball python. So I'm hoping she will do well in that. And yeah, I guess that's it on the topic of vivariums versus racks. So that wraps up this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and comment something, and if you are not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you all next time. Bye!